Hello everybody, we surveyed 100 parents asking the question, what is the ultimate zero compromise performance dad car? And our survey said, the RS6. And we're kicking things off with what is, at least on paper to me, the most desirable RS6. Also happens to be the most affordable RS6. But what are these actually like to drive? Could you steal daily one of these today, or will it financially kick you in the conkers? Let's find out. My name's Ben, and welcome to Dadcars. Hello everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Now, before we get back to the driving, let's just bask in the glory that is true, uncompromised practicality. Practicality that you get with an RS6. I mean, look at this. I'm 5'11", long torso. I've got loads of legroom there and headroom as well. So adults, teenagers, children of all ages. I'm gonna be able to sit in the back here, zero compromise. And they've got, look, this lovely leather with contrast stitching seat to look at, with the center section here being plastic, which is where the kids are obviously gonna be kicking the seat in front of you. Also in this model, your little ones will have their own little blade of carbon fiber to look at and their very own sweetie bin. Heated seats, blowers on the center there, as well as up here as well. This really is just, you know, a glorious family car, isn't it? And it gets even better when you have a look in the boot. The boot is absolutely massive, or to put it another way, over 10% bigger than a brand new Nissan Qashqai would be. But we already know on this channel, don't we, that estates are far more practical family cars than crossovers. Split folding as well in case you need to move house in your RS6. Obviously 2 sets of Isofix here in the back, but also on the front passenger seat there is Isofix. And in the glove box you can switch off the passenger side airbag. But the practicality alone isn't why I'm so excited about this car, it's because what's under the bonnet. So I'm going to hop back into this seat and tell you all about it. You ready to go for a little drive?
Does the roof come off?
Unfortunately not in this one, sweetie.
Wow. Louder.
You want it louder?
Yeah.
Shall I open the door?
Yeah.
You ready?
Yeah. Whoa.
Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Right, so let's go for a little drive, shall we?
Yeah.
God, it makes mincemeat of these speed bumps, doesn't it? It's a nice size as well. These were considered quite big beasties back in the day, but I think it's about 1.9 meters wide, which, you know, with SUVs being 2 meters wide, that tiny little bit of extra width does make a difference in city driving, certainly. Do you want to see how fast this is? You ready? Head back. Later on, sweetie, we're going to try it actually in sport mode, so we get it in the right gear. Do you want to know why Daddy likes this RS6 the most? It's because of what's underneath the bonnet. Do you know what engine it's got?
What?
It's got a 5-litre twin turbocharged V10. I know, amazing, right? You've never been in a V10 before. You've been in V12s, V8s. This is your first time in a V10, and they're a very special, rare breed now. I mean, I don't think they're going to make V10s anymore. But Pickle, this produces about 580 horsepower and 479 pound-foot of torque, I believe. And it's got a 6-speed ZF Tiptronic automatic gearbox, which I'm actually quite excited that this V10's got the 6-speed ZF, because hopefully it should give me a bit more time to enjoy this V10, as we are about to find out, because we're coming up to a national speed limit, sweetie. Are you starting to nod off already? Hey, sweetie, just before you go to sleep, do you want to see how fast this car is?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it is really fast, okay? So you ready? Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Ah.
And that's 60. What do you think?
Good.
It's really good, isn't it? And I always think with heavier vehicles as well, you know, this weighs a little over 2 tons. You know, that as it can accelerate at this rate, it almost feels faster. I think that's the thing that SUVs have as well, because they're so big and huge, and you know, when they shift, it almost kind of takes you by surprise. Look, I'll tell you what we'll do, sweeties. We'll actually do a 0 to 60. Look, if we turn around here, all right. Obviously this with its Quattro 4-wheel drive system as well. Right, sweetie, are you ready? Yeah? You ready? Roll and go.
Wow.
Oh, and 60. What do you think of that?
Good.
I think Audi claimed that the 0 to 60 in these is 4.6 seconds, but trust me, it's definitely faster than 4.6 seconds. I mean, my Maserati Grand Sport apparently could do it in 4.7, but this is a lot faster. I think this is closer to 4 seconds in reality. And speaking of my Maserati, this is dry sumped as well, sweetie. Do you know what that means? No? Well, if you imagine, like an engine needs to stay lubricated, an engine needs to stay wet, okay? And a dry sumped engine is kind of like, imagine if you were having a shower, yeah? So you've got water running on you all the time, whereas a wet sumped engine is like if you're having a bath. Yeah, so you're sort of sitting in the bath and it's there on the bottom. But if you were going around a corner really quickly in a bath, you know, all of the water would go out, wouldn't it? And you might get dry. Whereas if you went around a corner in a shower, the shower head would still just be sort of keeping you wet the whole time, wouldn't it? Does that make sense? But how do we feel about the looks of the C6 RS6? Because this is from a time when even the styling of the performance German cars were far more understated than today. You know, these were produced from 2008 until 2010, I believe. And to my eyes today, this is a glorious, understated, classy, you know, estate car. It's wonderful. And it's one of the things which you could say is lost in the current generation RS6. You know, the fact that you could have this car, park it in a car park, drive it around and, you know, not draw too much attention to yourself. And interestingly, despite the fact that this has got a V10, you know, this car is completely standard. You know, the exhaust system's all standard as well. And when you are driving it around at low RPM in a higher gear, you can't hear it. There's nothing that's going to make anybody that you pass by turn around and look at this car. And even if they did, you know, as it drives past, because it is classy, because it's understated, you know, it kind of just slides on past. But when you put your foot down, oh goodness me. Oh. So lovely and understated on the outside, but what about the inside here as a driver? Now, if you're into the latest and greatest, I can see why you'd sit in here and say that it feels, you know, quite dated now. These cars are what now, like 15 years old? You know, this is a 2009. So you don't have any lever on the dash up here. Your drive mode selector is a bit more old school. You do have some lovely pieces of carbon fiber in here, but for me as the driver, you know, what my attention is sort of focused on here is the steering wheel and the instrument cluster. And this is an example of a perfect instrument cluster, in my opinion, with the two analog dials either side, sandwiching what I think is the perfect size screen that you'd ever want. The steering wheel is a lovely size with perforated leather where your hands are there. It feels really nice and sits in the hand really nice. The paddle shifters are tiny and they sort of feel quite sort of plasticky. So yeah, not the best pedals I ever felt, but having said that, the Urus that I recently drove on the channel, you know, the pedals on that didn't feel exactly high end. But overall, honestly, you know, Audis from the noughties, late noughties, I personally think that externally, internally, I think they've aged really, really well, and I'm a massive fan. So I know what you're thinking. Look, it sounds great, you know, ultimate practicality, a V10 supercar engine up front, and these are quite affordable as well. I'll tell you in a second what you can get them for in the classifieds now. But you're thinking, come on, Ben, a V10 is gonna be ruinous to run and maintain. And so come on, how much would it cost realistically for you to run one of these? Well, around £700. £700 for insurance is what this car's owner, Alex, pays. He also pays around £700, the top whack, for road tax, and it's around £700 for a service from an independent specialist. Miles per gallon, going by what it says on the trip computer, if you're on a run, apparently it's possible to get to 24 miles per gallon. Alex got about 21 on average on his run down to me today to bring this car. Around city, you will see around 15 miles per gallon, but real world mixed driving, enjoying yourself, obviously you've got a V10, you're gonna be using it, aren't you? And Alex says that on average, out of a tank of fuel, which when he fills it up is about 65 litres, I mean it's got an 80 litre tank, but 65 litres, he says he gets around 220 miles out of around 65 litres, which means that on average mixed driving, he is getting sort of somewhere between 15 and 16 miles per gallon, which depending on how many miles a year you do is either acceptable in order to have a V10 or is just not going to be enough. But interestingly, they are around the same miles per gallon figures I've been getting out of my much lighter V8 powered Maserati. And so those real world miles per gallon figures to me seem rather acceptable from a over 2-ton family car with a V10. But what about when things go wrong, you know, expenses above a normal service? Well, yeah, look, Alex has had this car for 2.5 years. I think he's put 15,000 miles on it, and he has spent, you know, a couple of grand a year on top of everything else as well on things like, you know, new brake pads and discs for the front, which were about £1,800, and apparently, you know, these do go through pads quite quickly, you know, and I can see why, because you've just got the temptation of that engine, haven't you? And then you're going to need to be slowing yourself down rather quickly. Alex has recently put a full set of Michelin Pilot Sport 4S's on this car, which cost around £1,000. He also said as well that he's got a little bit of an oil leak, which I think he's recently spent £1,000 on that. And he also tells me that these are notorious for, there's a particular oil seal that can go, which the oil seal itself costs like 50p, but if you have that particular oil seal go wrong, they need to take the engine out to replace it, and all in that job costs about £3,000 to £4,000. Yes. So reading between the lines, I would say, look, similarly to an Aston Martin of the same era, a Maserati of the same era, you know, you should probably be setting aside, I think, about £3,000 a year for servicing and maintenance. But if you can stomach that, you will be living the dream with a twin turbocharged V10. Oh, and how much do these cost today? Well, when they were brand new, they cost from around £80,000. Adjusting for inflation today, that's about £120,000, £125,000. But I checked Auto Trader this morning, and the cheapest RS6s of any generation are these, the C6s. And they start from around £16,000. Which if you got one of these, which wasn't immediately about to blow up on you, for around £16,000, oh my God, talk about value for money. God. But the general rule with any depreciated performance car like this is you should probably ignore, you know, the cheapest ones on the market, you know, and spend closer to £20,000, I would say, for one of these, and definitely get a pre-purchase inspection. So massively depreciated, yes, but the great thing about the C6 is that it's still relatively modern. You know, 15 years old, you know, these achieved a positive NCAP crash test rating. You know, the previous generation, the C5, I don't think did particularly well at NCAP, so then Audi, you know, for this one, they made a lot of improvements. It's only got 1 star for pedestrian safety though, so yeah. But that's what I think makes these C6s such a sweet spot, you know. They are heavily depreciated. They've got an engine from a time when everything was awesome and you're never going to get this again, but they're still modern enough that you can have your family on board, your precious cargo, you know, and still feel like you've got a good level of fundamental safety in this vehicle. So I've been driving this in comfort the whole time, and my little pickle is asleep in the back. So let's see if we can put it into sport and see, because it's got adaptive dampers. Oh God, yeah, no, that that firms things up rather a lot. So I'm going to do the rest of this review in sport suspension. Oh no, that's, yeah, you can really feel it. Oh, oh no, so no, no, look, I'm going to go, let's go dynamic. So let's see if that's a happy medium. So obviously we know straight line performance in this is incredible. And take it from me, you know, experiencing it actually exceeds your expectations. It's absolutely blistering. And this engine and the way it pulls, the way it feels, oh, it's incredible. But what about everything else, you know, like just driving around normally, and what's the steering like? Well, I've spent some time with an S5 from a similar generation to this, and I didn't particularly like the steering. You know, like Audis from this time, they've got a tendency, what happens is, as you're at parking speed or creeping around a car park speed, it feels like the steering column is almost like detached from the car. It's so loose. And then as you speed up, this system, you know, electronically stiffens things up to the point where when you're on the motorway, the steering is really, really firm, you know, just to sort of like keep you in a straight line. And once you get used to it, it's okay. And there definitely is a similar system in this, but it just doesn't seem anywhere near as extreme as it was in that S5. Yeah, it still doesn't have bags of feel, but it's a nice intuitive weight to this steering. It feels nice. Yeah, see, look, going slower there and it's loosened up. All right, let's turn around. What's the turning circle like? I've heard the turning circle's rubbish, but I would say that's too bad. Obviously, you've got, look, reverse camera here as well. Not a daunting thing at all to sort of pilot around, you know, even in awkward sort of positions. The throttle has a real keenness about it. Oh, yeah. You know, I wonder whether this would be a bit of a wafter, but no, it's got a real keenness there. There is a slight sort of delay to the throttle response, which, you know, I guess you would expect. And funnily enough, in that S5 I had, it had a drive-by-wire mod attached to it. So this engine really is an absolute masterpiece. Oh, it feels so nice. It really does. Does it feel like an MX-5 on the twisties when you're cornering? No. No, it doesn't, but were you expecting it to? You know, I don't think that's what this is about. You know, this was made to be the king of the Autobahn. And on the corners and roundabouts that I've been putting this car on today, again, it's exceeded my expectations. Maybe that's because I've been driving some performance SUVs recently, the Urus, the Jeep SRT, which obviously just like fall apart when they hit a corner. But yeah, you don't get that in here because you've got a lower center of gravity. And whilst the engine is way over the front, you know, past the axle, I think because of that dry sump system, I think they're able to sit the whole engine a bit lower as well. I need to say a massive thank you to the owner of this car, Alex. Thank you so much for bringing this down today. I've been so excited about driving one of these for so many years. Alex is a dad himself as well. He's got a young daughter. Hello to you, Esme. I was going to get my little pickle to say hello to you as well, but she is fast asleep in the back. But thank you for letting me drive your dad's car, Esme. Your dad is very cool and he's got a very cool dad car. So verdict time then. What is my conclusion on the C6 Audi RS6? Well, honest to God, this has exceeded my expectations. This car, in theory and on paper, offers you 100% of the practicality that you would ever need for you and your family, except it's got a supercar engine under the bonnet. And in practice, it's even more awesome than you think, honestly. Oh, the pull of this engine is infectious. You know, because it's a 6-speed, you just get all the more time to enjoy the pull of this engine. I can see why people go through brake pads in these, like, oh. Honestly, the way that this car drives and performs today, it exceeds my expectations. This could have been a bit more of a tank, and I still would have loved it, but it's not, it's better. And if you're thinking about buying one of these, look, this is the great thing. You know, for around £20,000, you should be able to get yourself a really nice, well cared for one of these. £20,000. Honestly, if you're thinking about buying one, buy one. If you weren't thinking about buying one until watching this video, think about buying one because they're amazing. And man, if I got one of these, put a 4-cross Multimac in the back, and then went and did some European road trips with all my family, my wife on the passenger side there, I can't think of right now, for £20,000, something that's cooler and more capable than this. What am I forgetting? Let me know in the comments below. Honestly, it's ferocious, the kick down. No matter what speed you're going. I was doing 50 miles an hour there in a 60, put my foot down, it just kicks you. It just goes. This engine's amazing. Oh God, I love it. Look, I can waffle on about how much I love this forever, but we need to wrap this video up. And in actual fact, the only question I'm now left with is, you know, which is the best RS6? And fortunately, very soon on this channel, we have got a C7 RS6 coming to the channel as well. So if you'd like to see that, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.